A breach in the quiet frontier. The Illyria, four-frontier colony, had always felt like a promise. One of the rare worlds where humanity lived without the constant humming edge of danger. Green-blue oceans shimmered beneath twin moons, and crystalline mountains scattered light into 1,000 gentle colors. Children chased one another through low-gravity parks, their laughter echoing across the domed promenades. Farmers tended algae fields in quiet lagoons, while orbital workers monitored traffic from the ring station above. Illyria, was not a fortress. It didn't need to be, or so everyone believed. General Alara Vance had grown used to that belief, even if she didn't share it. She sat in the observation deck of the Frontier Defense Cohort, a wall of transparent alloy giving her full view of the tranquil world below. Reports floated as holograms around her. Routine cargo logs, mineral scans, patrol routes. Everything looked normal except for the faint anomalies she had noted the past 3 days. Microgravity distortions. Ghost readings on the edge of imperial space. Faint spikes in background radiation. Nothing conclusive. But Alara Vance had lived long enough to trust her instincts over statistics. She dismissed the reports and tapped her wristband. Central, run another sweep on the outer ring. I want confirmation on gravimetric activity. The AI responded with calm neutrality. Reinitializing grid. Estimated time, 32 seconds. Vance exhaled. Perhaps it was simply space's natural unpredictability. But a quiet dread pressed the back of her mind, whispering that something was drifting toward them, something not natural at all. Far beyond Illyria, in the polished halls of the Galactic Empire's Sector Command, Legate Vorkal Resh signed the approval for a routine boundary inspection. His voice echoed through the chamber metallically. Humans expand too quickly. We require data on their frontier capabilities. His officers saluted. None questioned the order. The Empire's confidence was absolute, built on millennia of dominance and an unshakable belief that humanity was still a young, reckless species barely holding its place in the stars. What Vorkal Resh didn't know, what no one noticed until it was far too late, was that a junior officer had prepared the wrong device for the mission. Instead of a passive gravimetric scanner, the officer approved activation of a high-energy probe designed for deep void meteor fracturing. The device would fire directly through the Illyria 4 system. On Illyria 4's orbital ring, alarms erupted in a sudden, violent chorus. Red lights strobed through hallways as the station groaned, metal struts bending under the unseen force rippling through them. Vance raced across the command deck as hollow screens glitched with static. "Report," she barked. A technician shouted over the noise. "Massive gravimetric shockwave. Origin point unknown. Intersecting our orbit." A shuttle carrying schoolchildren spiraled dangerously as its stabilizers flickered. Vance slammed her hand onto the emergency override controls. "Engage magnetic anchoring. Redirect auxiliary power to life support. Move rescue craft into position." The deck vibrated violently. Clamps snapped into place across the station's surface, holding the structure together as the invisible wave tore through it. A sickening metallic screech echoed through the void before the shock finally passed, leaving Illyria 4's orbital ring battered but intact. The screens flickered back to life, and silence settled like dust. "Casualties?" Vance asked. "Minor injuries. No deaths," the medic responded. But station integrity was at 11% from catastrophic failure. 11%. A breath away from mass tragedy. Vance felt her hands curl into fists. "Trace the signature of that shockwave," she ordered quietly. As the sensors recalibrated, the readings came in. Imperial energy signature. Clear. Unmistakable. Her blood ran cold. This was no natural anomaly. Hours later, the Interstellar Congress convened via HoloLink. Generals filled the central feed. The steel-voiced Admiral Kalen Rhodes, Intelligence Director Silas Marrow, and General Matteo Drask, a man known for decisive fury. Vance presented the data succinctly. It came from Imperial space. Whether deliberate or negligent, They fired a probe capable of destabilizing an inhabited station. Drask didn't wait for the floor. Our children were on that shuttle. Our civilians were almost torn apart. Intent is unclear, Director Marrow added carefully. Drask slammed his fist against the table. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. Across thousands of kilometers, no one argued. Vance knew the truth. All humans learn the hard way. Humanity does not tolerate threats to their own. Not ever. She straightened and spoke with deliberate calm, the kind that carried more weight than shouting. We need to send a message. Not aggression, not yet, but clarity. Congress nodded. A communique was drafted and transmitted directly to the Galactic Empire. You have endangered our homeland. We demand explanation, accountability, and guarantees of non-aggression. Nobody expected humility from the Empire. Certainly not remorse. But everyone knew one thing. Humanity had drawn a line. In the vast throne hall of the Galactic Empire, nobles, officers, and governors gathered in disbelief as the message replayed. You endangered our homeland. A simple sentence, but chilling in its certainty. Vorkal Resh felt his throat tighten as he slowly realized the catastrophe he had unleashed. The Emperor stared at the message, expression unreadable. "What have we done?" he whispered. No one answered, because for the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Empire felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The revealing of humanity's resolve. The titanium bastion lay buried beneath Earth's mantle, an interlocking fortress of alloy and reinforced crystal, pulsing with quiet power. It had no windows. It needed none. Every wall was a display, every corridor a defense line. And today, the bastion thrummed with tension. General Alara Vance stood at the head of the circular war table as senior leadership assembled. Admiral Kalen Rhodes, tall and severe, with eyes like sharpened steel. Intelligence Director Silas Marrow, thin and composed, carrying an aura of perpetual analysis. And General Mateo Drask, the storm in human form. Vance touched a control panel, projecting the Illyria for incident into the room. "We have confirmed," she began, "that the gravimetric probe originated from imperial space. Whether intentional or not, the result could have been catastrophic." Drask leaned forward, jaw clenched. "Could have been? Alara, it almost tore children out of orbit." "No one is disputing the threat," Marrow responded calmly. "But we must determine their motive before." "Before what?" Drask snapped. "Before we act? Before we defend our own?" A quiet silence fell. Vance held up a hand, steadying the room. "Mateo," she said, "we will act. But we act with clarity, not rage." Drask exhaled sharply but nodded. He trusted her. Everyone did. Vance continued. "Illyria, for is not simply territory. It is home. The Empire violated that, knowingly or not. They must understand why this is unacceptable." Admiral Rhodes folded her arms. "And they must understand what will happen if it happens again. That was why they were here. To decide what humanity's message would be, not in words, but in posture." The Galactic Empire's envoy arrived 3 days later. Their cruiser descended into Earth orbit like a moving cathedral, adorned with banners of gold and obsidian. The Empire had come expecting ceremony, deference, perhaps even intimidation. Instead, they were greeted in silence. Human soldiers lined the reception hall, straight-backed, armored, unblinking. No fanfare, no pleasantries, only precision. Envoy Tarkarel stepped forward, his expression a mix of pride and unease. He bowed stiffly. "On behalf of the Galactic Empire," he began, "I come to clarify a misunderstanding." Drask's eyes darkened instantly. "Misunderstanding," he repeated. Tarkarel smiled diplomatically. "Yes, a scientific probe passed through your territory by regrettable error. We wish to express mild." "Mild?" Drask's voice cut like a blade. "Your probe nearly split a station. It nearly killed our civilians." The envoy blinked. "The Empire regrets the inconvenience." Vance stepped forward before Drask exploded. Her tone was calm, but cold enough to frost metal. You endangered our homeland, she said. Understand the weight of those words. The envoy froze. For the first time, he truly seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, not technologically, but culturally. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. General Vance, the Empire did not think humans would view the incident with such severity. That sentence sealed his fate. You didn't think, Drask said quietly. That is the problem. The envoy's report reached the Empire within hours, carrying a single repeated message. Humans consider the probe an attack. They are mobilizing. The Imperial Senate erupted into chaos. They are overreacting, one senator shouted. They threaten war over an accident, another protested. Legate Vorkal Resh closed his eyes, shame and fear twisting inside him. We endangered their people, he admitted. To humans, that is not a political misstep. It is a violation of their core survival doctrine. The Emperor listened in heavy silence. What preparations have the humans made? Vorkal Resh hesitated. All of them. The Emperor's blood ran cold. Back on Earth, preparations expanded far beyond diplomacy. Admiral Rhodes oversaw the activation of Project Aegis. Deep within asteroid belts across human territory, dormant structures stirred. Engines hummed to life. Black holes glimmered, shedding decades of dust as lights illuminated their names. Solaris, Dauntless, Revenant. 3 dreadnoughts, titans of silent steel, built for a war humanity hoped would never come. Now they awoke. Director Marrow watched the data streams and whispered, "The Empire will see this as escalation." "They should," Rhodes replied, "because they escalated first." In the war chamber, the envoy faced the assembled human generals once more. Tarkarel cleared his throat. "We did not anticipate such a strong mobilization." Vance spoke again, her tone as precise as a blade's edge. "Because you still do not understand humanity." She tapped the control, projecting images. Children on the Illyria, forced shuttle, crying as gravity failed. Engineers clinging to stations, threatening to tear apart. Families huddled in shelters while alarms blared. The Empire may see territory as borders. We see every inhabited world as part of our home. Our people are not bargaining chips. They are not acceptable collateral. Drask stepped forward. "When we said you endangered our homeland," he said, "we meant it. We protect our own. Always." The envoy had no answer. Not because he lacked words, because the truth had finally struck him. The Empire had misjudged the most dangerous thing about humanity. Not their strength, not their technology, but their unity. As the envoy departed Earth, shaken and wordless, Vance and Drask watched the cruiser vanish into the atmosphere. "Do you think they understand now?" she asked. Drask's jaw tightened. "No, but they're beginning to fear, and fear will make them listen." Above them, the first lights of the Aegis fleet shimmered into orbit, silent reminders that humanity, when threatened, did not hesitate. Illyria, would be protected. Earth would be protected. Every human world would be protected. Because the message was clear now, unmistakable across the stars. You endangered our homeland, and humanity will never allow that twice. The Empire in retreat. The Imperial Senate chamber had weathered centuries of political storms, but none like this. Senators shouted across the floor in a cacophony of panic, pride, and disbelief. Light from the towering stained glass panels flickered wildly as debate raged. "They are preparing for war," one senator bellowed. "Over a malfunctioning probe," another shot back. "Not a malfunction," Vorkal Resh growled from the center dais. His voice carried the weight of guilt he could no longer ignore. "A misfire caused by our negligence. Our mistake. And a mistake the humans interpret as a threat to their very existence." The room fell into tense, unwilling silence. The Emperor finally spoke, tone low and heavy. "Explain, Legate." Vorkal Resh bowed his head. "Humans do not separate politics from survival. They respond to potential extermination with absolute, coordinated defense. Their mobilization is not posturing. It is instinct." "Instinct," Senator Ateria scoffed. "They're a young species, unrefined, emotional. Emotional? Vorkal Resh snapped. Their response is the opposite. They mobilized with frightening precision. Their fleets moved without chaos. Their generals speak with one voice. Their society unified in hours. Uneasy murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Empire had never considered humanity an equal. They had certainly never considered them a threat. But now, with hundreds of imperial border outposts reporting the presence of unknown human vessels shadowing them, silent, stealthy, unchallenged, fear spread like cracks in ancient stone. Across the void, humanity's resolve sharpened into readiness. On the bridge of the dreadnought Solaris, Admiral Kalen Rhodes stood like a sculpted figure facing a star-filled horizon. The ship hummed around her, reactor cores glowing with restrained power. Ghost Wing has completed infiltration routes along the border, a lieutenant announced. Good, Rhodes replied. Maintain distance. No engagements unless fired upon. Yes, Admiral. The Ghost Wing, humanity's experimental stealth division, moved like shadows through space. Their fighters glided beyond sensor range, watching Imperial fleets with unblinking vigilance. Humanity wasn't preparing to strike. Not yet. They were preparing to end any strike before it began. On Earth, General Vance and General Drask stood within the Circular War Council chamber as diplomats, military advisors, and analysts streamed in. The air was charged, every movement tense, deliberate. Director Silas Marrow displayed encrypted feeds from Imperial space. We've intercepted over 200 Senate transmissions, Marrow reported. Half the Empire believes we're bluffing. The other half believes we're preparing for extermination-level retaliation. Drask smirked darkly. Smart half. Vance shot him a sharp look, but couldn't deny the truth. Humanity's preparations were visible across the stars. We need to state our terms clearly, Vance said. No ambiguity. No threats they can misinterpret. Roads appeared via HoloLink. And if they ignore our clarity? Vance and Drask exchanged a silent, heavy understanding. Then we enact Phoenix Fall, Drask said. The room fell still. Phoenix Fall, humanity's contingency plan to disable 3 of the Empire's largest shipyards in a single synchronized strike, had existed only on encrypted servers and whispered warnings. It would not start a war, but it would end the possibility of one. The Empire's envoy returned to Earth under direct Imperial command, no longer draped in arrogance or ceremonial grandeur. The cruiser entered orbit with its banners dimmed, diplomatic shields down, a symbolic gesture of vulnerability. Tarkarel stepped into the war council chamber visibly shaken. Gone was the polished composure he had once worn like an armor of superiority. His voice trembled as he spoke. The Empire requests dialogue. True dialogue. Drask's expression remained ice. Vance nodded. Begin. Tarkarel swallowed. We acknowledge the probe incident. We acknowledge negligence. But we ask that humanity understand. Our intent was not hostile. Vance raised a hand. The chamber dimmed, replaced by holograms of Illyria, 4's damaged orbital ring. Families in emergency shelters. Engineers working beside ruptured hull plating. Children crying in gravity swings that had nearly failed. Intent, she said quietly, does not erase the danger you created. We did not know humans would see a scientific error as an attack, Drask finished, because it nearly killed our people. Tarkarel bowed his head. Then we must understand this difference. What is Homeland to humans? A border? A planet? A region? Vance answered plainly, powerfully. Anywhere our people live, she said. Anywhere our children sleep. You endangered our homeland because you endangered them. Drask stepped forward. And we do not tolerate that. Not from invaders. Not from allies. Not from anyone. The envoy's breath caught. In that moment, he understood something the Empire had failed to grasp for decades. Humanity was not reactionary. Humanity was protective. And there is no force in the galaxy more dangerous than a species protecting its own. Hours later, as the envoy departed Earth to report back to the Empire, Vance and Drask walked along the observation deck overlooking the rising Aegis fleet. Rows of titanic vessels glowed under the orbital lights. Dreadnoughts, carriers, stealth wings, defensive platforms. Do you think the Empire will stand down? Vance asked quietly. They will, Drask replied. Or they'll break. Vance looked at him. You sound certain. I am, he said, because for the first time in their history, they're afraid. Not of our weapons, of our conviction. Above them, the Solaris rotated gracefully into formation, its hull reflecting sunlight like a blade forged for war. Humanity did not want this war, but they would win it if forced, because the message resounded through every fleet, every world, every soldier. You endangered our homeland, and humanity never forgives that danger twice. The judgment of a species. The Chamber of Accord, built from shimmering crystalline plates and towering obelisks of emerald stone, had been designed to host peaceful diplomatic resolutions. Instead, on this day, it resembled a tribunal. Representatives of over 50 species crowded the high balconies, whispering in hushed, incredulous tones as the human delegation entered with deliberate, measured steps. General Mara Vance led the group, her uniform crisp, her posture sharp enough to cut through the tension hanging in the air. Behind her walked Fleet Marshal Adric Solon, Ambassador Nils Rourke, and several members of the United Terran Strategic Council. Their expressions carried none of the fury that had fueled humanity's swift counterstrike, but none of the softness that once defined Terran diplomacy, either. They looked like a species that had survived extinction-level threats and was fully prepared to do it again. On the central dais, the High Regent of the Galactic Empire waited. He was flanked by shimmering honor guards and wrapped in silken vestments, trying, unsuccessfully, to mask his trembling. His eyes flicked between the humans and the assembled crowd, as though searching for an ally, a lifeline, anything. General Vance stopped 10 paces from him. Her voice echoed across the chamber. High Regent, you demanded we answer why humanity struck back with such force. But your question reveals your blindness. Your empire, she paused deliberately, letting the silence become sharp, endangered our homeland. Gasps rippled across the room. The words had been spoken before, in restricted meetings and private confrontations, but never so clearly, never in front of the entire Galactic Congress. The High Regent attempted to recover his poise. The incursion was an accident, a strategic miscalculation at worst. We did not intend. You unleashed autonomous nanite harvesters on Earth. Ambassador Rourke cut in, his voice cold steel. They devoured forests, oceans, infrastructure, anything that contained usable carbon or metal. Whether your intention was conquest, intimidation, or a miscalculation makes no difference. You endangered our world. General Vance stepped forward, her expression carved from granite. And humanity does not tolerate those who endanger our home. A panoramic feed projected behind her, images captured during the crisis. The destruction of cities, civilians fleeing, skies filled with metallic fog. The gallery recoiled. Some species turned away, unable to watch. To them, it was unimaginable that any empire would test the boundaries of a Death World species like this. The High Regent struggled to retain control. Your retaliation was beyond proportion. You dismantled our outer fleets, seized our military foundries, and forced half our nobles to surrender. Marshal Solon allowed himself a tiny, humorless smile. Proportion is measured in what we risk losing, he said. You risked our existence. We responded accordingly. There was no bravado in his voice, only simple truth. Humanity's strength did not come from cruelty or conquest. It came from the instinct to survive, sharpened across millennia of adversity. The Empire had awakened that instinct, and now it was being judged for its arrogance. General Vance turned to the counselors seated on the balconies. We stand before you today to set the record straight. Humanity is not here to conquer. We seek peace, genuine, enduring peace. But peace cannot exist while empires treat our home as expendable. She pointed to the regent. Thus, the Terran people issue our terms. The chamber froze. Every translator unit hummed with anticipation. First, she said, the Empire will decommission its autonomous weapon systems capable of planetary-scale ecological harm. Second, all border territories near Terran space are to be demilitarized for a minimum of 50 standard years. Third, all scientific and military personnel responsible for the nanite deployment will be surrendered for trial. And fourth, her voice dropped to a deadly calm. The Empire will issue a formal, universal apology for endangering Earth. Not to humanity's leaders, not to the Terran military, but to the 8 billion civilians who suffered for your recklessness. The High Regent's composure shattered. You demand humiliation. No, Ambassador Rourke replied softly. We demand accountability. That is the price of peace with our kind. Murmurs swelled through the balconies, some supportive, some wary, but none dismissive. The Empire had lost its moral high ground, and every species present knew it. A vote was inevitable, and the Empire's allies were few. As the Council prepared ballots, a quiet tension crept into the room. The Regent glared at the humans with venomous resentment. This will not be forgotten, he whispered. General Vance leaned in slightly. Good. Let never be forgotten. Let every empire listen and understand. Humanity does not seek war. But we will not allow harm to our home. Ever again. The vote concluded. A hologram appeared above the chamber. The Council accepts all Terran conditions. The Empire is found guilty of endangering a sovereign world. A roar erupted from the balconies. Some cheers, some cries of disbelief. But for the first time since the crisis began, humanity felt the weight ease, even if only slightly. As the humans turned to depart, Marshal Solon paused beside the Regent. This was the lightest sentence we could offer. Do not mistake our restraint for weakness. The humans exited the chamber with steady steps, leaving behind an Empire force to face the consequences of its hubris. Outside, as the Terran delegation boarded their shuttle, General Vance stared at the stars. Earth was safe. The Empire had been humbled, and the galaxy had been reminded of a truth carved in Terran history. Humanity is peaceful until pushed, but once pushed, they are unstoppable.